Would you believe it? Selling greens at the local market is 5 times more profitable than selling imported fruit. That's not just a rumor. It's a hard-earned business lesson that James taught his wife right at a Vietnamese countryside market. From a humble breakfast to selling out an entire basket of veggies in just 30 minutes. Is leaving the city for the countryside a step back or an untapped gold mine? And what is the secret midnight farm expansion plan that made Diep agree immediately? The answer is all in these 20 healing yet business-savvy minutes. Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to join James and his wife as they start from scratch. Let's go. The sun hadn't quite peeked out from behind the distant mountains yet, but the sky had shifted from deep blue to a soft purple pink. In Diep and James's little house, the day didn't start with a blaring alarm clock, but with the rich aroma of fried shallots and broth simmering gently on the stove. Diep stood by the stove, her hands moving quickly but gently. She was preparing breakfast, an important ritual to kickstart the day for the family. Today, the menu was a little different. Instead of elaborate pho or bun diep, chose instant noodles cooked with tomatoes and eggs, served with hot, crispy baguette. A rustic dish, but through Diep's hands, it became colorful and nutritious. The sound of the knife against the cutting board clicked and clacked like background music for the quiet morning. James walked into the kitchen. His tall frame seemed to make the small space feel tighter, but also infinitely warmer. He didn't sit and wait to be served. Instead, he naturally rolled up his sleeves and walked over to Diep. "Good morning, little boss," James whispered, his voice still a bit raspy with sleep, then gently kissed her hair. He took the initiative to grab the basket of washed fresh greens, shook off the water, and arranged them neatly on a plate. Even though James is a Westerner, his integration into this countryside life is something everyone admires. He learned how to hold chopsticks, how to eat fresh herbs, and now, how to share even the smallest tasks in the kitchen. "Can you wake Nye up? We don't want her to be late," Diep said, still seasoning the pot of broth. James nodded and went into the bedroom. Little Nye was still curled up in the blanket, like a kitten breathing rhythmically. James sat on the edge of the bed, not rushing to wake her immediately. He watched her innocent face for a moment, his heart filled with peace. Then he gently shook her shoulder. "Need time to get up, princess. The sun is already high above the bamboo trees." The little girl squinted, stretched long, and buried her head in James's lap, whining playfully. It took another 5 minutes of tickling and teasing before the house echoed with the sound of a child's giggles. Breakfast started just as the sunlight hit the doorstep. The three of them gathered around the rustic wooden table. Steam rose from the bowls of noodles, mingling with the smell of toasted bread. James broke off a piece of bread, dipped it into the rich soup, and nodded in approval. Simple but amazing Diep. You know, in big restaurants they sell an experience. But here, you feed me and our daughter with love. That's priceless. Diep smiled, her cheeks blushing. While eating, she took a moment to double-check Nye's backpack. "You have art class today, right? I sharpened your colored pencils and put your sketchbook in the front pocket. And the milk carton is in the side pocket. Remember to drink it during recess." Nye nodded furiously. while chewing on a piece of fried egg. Yes, Mom, I remember. The atmosphere wasn't just about care. It was also when James and Diep discussed the day's plans. Later, after dropping her off, I think we should stop by Uncle Bay's vegetable garden at the entrance of Vinh Quang Village. James suggested, his eyes shifting to the serious look of a businessman. I heard he's applying a new drip irrigation model. If we want to expand our farming, that's the best place to learn right now. The family's old motorbike hummed along the winding village road. The morning breeze hit their faces cool and refreshing, carrying the scent of wild grass and damp earth. Little Nee sat in the middle, singing songs she learned at school, her hands holding tight to her dad's shirt. Diep sat at the back, wrapping her arms around both of them, feeling the steadiness of James's back. After dropping Nee off at the school gate with a lingering wave goodbye, James and Diep continued their journey to Uncle Bay's garden. The road leading to Vinh Quang Garden was lined with lush green trees on both sides, with young rice fields in the distance. Uncle Bay's vegetable garden appeared before them like a perfect picture of modern agriculture blended with tradition. Unlike the fragmented plots usually seen, this garden was incredibly well planned. Rows of mustard greens, lettuce and scallions were planted in perfectly straight lines. An automatic watering system was running, spraying thin mists onto every leaf, making the whole garden sparkle under the sun as if it were silver-plated. Diep stepped off the bike, unable to hide her admiration. She gently touched a plump head of lettuce, feeling its freshness. Look at this. Their veggies don't have any wormholes, and every leaf is perfectly even. How do they do that? Diep exclaimed. James stood next to her, but he wasn't just admiring the view. He was studying the soil texture, the spacing between rows, and how they use netting to block insects. It's all about the process, Honey James analyzed. They don't plant based on intuition. Look at that drainage system, deep and wide trenches, to ensure the roots don't get waterlogged during heavy rain. This is exactly what we need to learn. Just then, Uncle Bay, the garden owner, a man in his 60s with healthy tan skin, came out to say hello. After some small talk, James quickly steered the conversation toward technical skills. But surprisingly, James wasn't just there to look. As they walked deeper into the garden and saw the mustard greens at their peak, harvest time, an idea sparked in James's mind. He pulled Diep back and whispered, "Diep, look at this amount of veggies. Uncle Bay said the wholesalers are coming this afternoon, but I see some rows are slightly overgrown. Wholesalers usually lowball him for this type, but actually, the quality is still excellent." Diep looked confused. So what? We can't eat all of that. James smiled, the smile of someone seeing an opportunity in a market gap. Not for eating. We're going to buy them right now. He explained quickly. If we buy some at a wholesale price right here at the garden, then take them to the district market to sell immediately this morning, we'll make a profit. But more important than the profit, it's a test. What kind of test? Diep still didn't get it. To test what the customers at the district market actually need, and to test your sales skills. James winked. You want to do farming. You don't just need to know how to grow. You have to know how to sell. If you can sell this bunch of greens and make a profit, you'll be more confident selling your own products later. Diep hesitated for a moment, then nodded decisively. She understood that James was teaching her a practical lesson no textbook could offer. They approached Uncle Bay. James, with his usual tact and sincerity, made the offer. "Uncle Bay, I see those mustard greens over there are delicious, but it looks like you haven't had time to cut them yet. I want to buy about 20 kilo to give to friends and try out. Could you give us a friendly price?" James didn't mention he was reselling, knowing farmers are often hesitant to sell retail to petty traders. But the way he framed it made Uncle Bay happily agree immediately, even selling it for dirt cheap, since he was afraid the veggies would get too old anyway. The couple worked hard cutting the vegetables. Deep cut, and James arranged them neatly into 2 bamboo baskets tied behind the motorbike. The pungent smell of fresh vegetable sap mixed with the rich scent of earth created a thrilling aroma of labor. Deep looked at the fresh green bundles she had arranged herself, and an indescribable joy rose in her heart. It wasn't just merchandise. It was the result of observation and a little bit of recklessness. When the heavily loaded motorbike turned around to leave the garden, the sun was already high, bright, and blazing. James drove, calling back to her, "Now we head to the district market. Are you ready to pitch? Remember, our veggies are fresher than anything at the market because they were cut 15 minutes ago. That's your competitive advantage." Deep sat on the back, hugging her husband's waist, resting her head on his back. In her head, she started visualizing how she would stand at the market corner, calling out to sell these bundles of greens. The vague fear from earlier had vanished, replaced by excitement. She realized that going with James every ordinary day became an interesting adventure in growing up. And this morning, from the bowl of instant noodles in the kitchen to this lush green garden, was the very first brick building, their family's big dream. The motorbike, carrying the couple and 2 baskets of greenery, turned into the district market gate as the sun began to get harsher. The district market at this hour no longer had the hustle and bustle of early dawn, but it still kept that characteristic noisy rhythm with bargaining, traffic sounds, and the chaotic smells of food. Deep got off the bike, hesitating for a moment. Even though she was a local, she was used to farming in the quiet of the gardens, rather than facing a crowd to hawk goods. She looked at the 2 baskets of mustard greens and bok choy lying still on the back of the bike, and a vague anxiety rose in her heart. Would people still buy vegetables at this hour? Or had they already finished their shopping? James seemed to read her thoughts through the slight furrow of her brow. He didn't say anything, just quietly walked the bike to an empty spot under an old almond tree at the edge of the market. He put the kickstand down, untied the baskets, then turned to Diep with a familiar, reassuring smile. "Don't worry. Remember the lesson from this morning. We are selling freshness. Nobody here has vegetables as fresh as yours." The couple spread a small tarp on the ground. James, with his large hands that were used to holding pens or typing, now skillfully picked up each bundle of greens and arranged them neatly on the tarp. The bright lime green of the mustard greens stood out against the dusty ground. The cuts at the stems were still oozing fresh white sap proof that they had left Mother Earth less than an hour ago. The first customer was an old lady with a hunched back, carrying a worn red plastic basket. She was walking past, intending to keep going, but stopped short because of that lush green color. The old lady squinted, bent down her wrinkled hand touching the leaves. These veggies, how are they still so fresh at this hour, young man and lady? They look like they were just picked, don't they? Deep, bolstered by James's earlier encouragement, suddenly felt surprisingly confident. She smiled, a genuine and gentle smile. Yes, ma'am, my husband and I just cut them at Uncle Bay's garden moments ago. Look, the sap is still wet on my hands. Please buy a bunch for lunch. They're very sweet. James stood right next to her, politely clasping his hands and bowing. In his broken but incredibly endearing Vietnamese, he said, "The veggies are delicious, ma'am. No pesticides, very safe." The sight of a tall Western guy selling vegetables with his wife, combined with the obvious honesty shown in every bundle, grabbed everyone's attention. The old lady nodded and bought 3 big bundles on the spot. Yeah, looking at the stalks, I can tell it's clean, fresh produce. It's hard to find greens like this nowadays. Good news travels fast. In no time, that little corner under the almond tree was buzzing. Housewives doing late shopping and female factory workers on their lunch break flocked over. They picked up the bundles, feeling the crispness and the cool dew still clinging to the leaves, and no one wanted to put them back down. No loudspeakers needed, no pushy sales tactics. The quality of the product spoke for itself. Give me 2 bundles. I'll take the rest of this bok choy. It'll be perfect stir-fried with garlic. Diep's hands moved swiftly, bagging veggies and taking money, her smile as bright as a blooming flower. James clumsily helped his wife give change, sometimes making mistakes that made both the buyers and sellers burst into laughter. The transaction wasn't just a cold exchange of goods. It turned into a heartwarming connection. People were buying vegetables, but they were also buying into the hard work and the image of simple happiness from this young couple. In less than 40 minutes, the 2 full baskets were completely wiped out, leaving only a few crushed leaves on the tarp. Diep held the stack of small bills, not a huge amount compared to billion-dollar business deals, but the weight of the joy it brought was incomparable. She looked at James, her eyes sparkling. We did it. We sold everything. James wiped the sweat from his forehead, nodding proudly. I told you, when you put your heart into a product, customers can feel it immediately. They packed up, leaving the spot clean, and hopped on the bike to head home. The noon sun shone down on the village road, but now it didn't feel harsh anymore. It felt like it was dancing along with their joy. Sunset fell over the little house just as James and Diep's motorbike rolled into the yard. They had managed to pick up little Ly from school. The little girl chattered happily, showing off a family drawing that got a perfect score from her teacher, making the day's victory feel even more complete. After a long day of working and moving around, nothing beats the feeling of coming home. The simple but tidy wooden house welcomed them with its familiar quietness. James helped Diep carry the grocery bags they bought at the market into the kitchen. To celebrate their first successful business deal, they decided to make a dinner slightly more lavish than usual. While Diep changed clothes and washed Ny's face, James, the man of the house, took it upon himself to go to the backyard and gather some dry wood to start the fire. He loved sitting in front of the stove, watching the flames lick the wood, listening to the satisfying crackling sound. To him, it was meditation. The kitchen lit up again, but this time with the warm glow of the late afternoon, mixed with the flickering firelight. Diep put on her familiar apron and started preparing dinner. Tonight's menu featured braised pork belly with quail eggs, Nye's favorite, and a bowl of crab soup with jute vegetable and loofah to cool down after a sunny day. Of course, they couldn't forget the plate of boiled mustard greens, the spoils of war they had saved from Uncle Bay's garden for the family to enjoy. James didn't just stand and watch. He took on the task of picking the veggies and pounding the crabs. The sound of the pestle and mortar rang out rhythmically. Clump, 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 mixed with the sound of running water. "Is this pounded fine enough, Diep?" James asked, sweat beading on his forehead, but a smile still on his lips. "That looks good, honey. Make sure you filter it carefully. Don't leave any shell fragments, or Nye might choke," Diep reminded him gently. Delicious smells began to fill the space. The aroma of fried shallots, the rich braised pork mixed with fish sauce, and especially the elegant cooling scent of the boiling field crab soup. It was the scent of home, of memories, a scent capable of soothing all fatigue. Little Nee, fresh from her bath, ran into the kitchen, sniffing the air. "Mom, it smells so good, I'm hungry." "Almost done, sweetie. Go set the bowls and chopsticks for Mom and Dad." Diep looked at her daughter affectionately. The meal was laid out on a sedge mat in the middle of the house, right under the warm yellow light. No fancy tables or chairs. The whole family sat together, knees touching, creating an inseparable circle of intimacy. On the tray, the glossy caramel-colored pork stood next to the green crab soup, dotted with golden crab roe, and the plate of boiled greens vibrant and crisp. Steam rose from the food misty like fog, making the scene realistic, yet as beautiful as a movie frame. James scooped rice for his wife, then placed the leanest piece of meat into his daughter's bowl. "Bon appétit to the two most beautiful women in the world." He set his tone humorously formal, making Nee giggle. They started eating. A piece of boiled green dipped into fish sauce with crushed egg crunching as they bit into it. The rich sweetness of the fresh vegetable soaked into their tongues, completely different from the hastily bought supermarket veggies. "It's really good." Diep nodded. "Truly, vegetables that we personally handpicked, sold ourselves, and now cooked ourselves. It tastes 100 times sweeter." James looked at his wife, his eyes full of affection. "That's the taste of success, honey. You were very brave today. I believe our organic veggie model will thrive if we keep up this spirit." The meal wasn't just about the sounds of chewing and chopsticks clicking. It was filled with stories. Nee talked about school and friends. James and Diep shared stories about the funny customers at the market, the hunchbacked old lady, and the factory worker buying veggies in a rush. Worries about making ends meet seemed to stop right at the door. Here, in this moment, there was only sharing and understanding. After the meal, James brewed a pot of hot green tea. The three of them lingered around the cleared table. Diep peeled some fruit for dessert. Outside, crickets started their nightly chorus. The night breeze blew through the window, carrying the cool air from the fields. James took a sip of tea, watching Diep and Nye playing. He felt his chest swell with gratitude, grateful for choosing to leave the bustling city to come here. Grateful for the days of living slowly, to deeply appreciate life's value. An ordinary day had closed with no grand events, But it was these small moments, like selling veggies at the market or this warm dinner, that were the precious gems building lasting happiness. And just like that, in the small countryside house, laughter and chatter echoed into the quiet night, lulling dreams of a lush green future waiting ahead. Dinner was over, but the warmth seemed to linger in every corner of the wooden house. Little Nee, after a long day of running freely in the fields and happily helping her mom sell goods, had fallen into a deep sleep. The child's steady breathing sounded softly from the bedroom, the most peaceful rhythm any parent could wish to hear. Diep carried the tray of dishes to the water tank on the porch. James didn't let his wife do it alone. He rolled up his sleeves, sat on a low stool, and helped rinse the bowls. The waxing moon was high-hanging above the betel nut trees, casting a soft, silvery light onto the brick courtyard. The sound of splashing water and clinking dishes mixed with the humming of insects in the garden created a symphony typical of the countryside night quiet, but not lonely. "You worked hard today," James said softly, handing Diep the last clean bowl. "So did you," Diep smiled, shaking her wet hands. "But it was fun, right? It's been a long time since I felt like I did something that brought in real cash so quickly." With the cleaning done, James brewed a pot of lotus tea, a type he had fallen in love with since coming to Vietnam. He brought the tea set out to the bamboo bench in front of the porch, facing the garden now submerged in the night mist. The couple sat opposite each other. Hot steam rose from the tea, carrying the fragrant scent of lotus drifting like smoke. James poured tea into 2 small cups. The liquid was golden and thick under the yellow light from the porch. He lifted the cup, took a deep breath, and took a small sip, letting the slight bitterness on the tip of his tongue turn into a sweet aftertaste in his throat. That was how he learned to enjoy the slowness of life. James put the teacup down, gazing out at the empty plot of land on the side of the house, currently just sparse weeds. In his mind, the picture of that land appeared clearly vivid and colorful. He turned to Diep, his eyes serious, but full of excitement. "Diep," James started, his voice warm and deep. "I'm thinking about this morning, about Uncle Bay's vegetable garden and the money we made at the market this afternoon." Diep swirled the teacup in her hand, listening. "What are you thinking?" "I think it's time we stop settling for just enough to eat." James leaned forward, his eyes lighting up. "I want to expand. I want our garden to truly become a farm, even if it's a small one." Diep was slightly taken aback. She was used to being content with what they had. "But how do you plan to do that?" "Our garden is big, but can just the 2 of us handle it?" James nodded. He understood his wife's practical concern. "I've calculated it. We won't do it all at once. I want to start by raising chickens. Not just a few for meat, but a free-range flock of about 50 to 100. Seeing Diep frowning in thought, James continued, his voice persuasive. "Listen to my analysis. Free-range chickens in this area fetch a very high price. We have plenty of land and grass, so the chickens can forage for part of their food-reducing feed costs. Native eggs and clean chicken meat are exactly what city people, my friends, and our online customers are craving." He paused for a moment, drawing in the air as if sketching the model. "Plus, most importantly, chicken manure. It is the best organic fertilizer for vegetables. We will compost it to fertilize the new batch of greens. It's a closed loop, Diep. The chickens feed the veggies feed us, and the vegetable waste goes back to feed the chickens. Diep fell silent, starting to visualize what James was saying. The image of chickens chirping and running in the garden baskets of pinkish-brown eggs nestled in straw nests. It was beautiful, but also full of challenges. Utah, but what about the capital? Diep asked the most practical question. The cost of the chicks, the fencing, the initial feed. James took his wife's rough, farming-hardened hands and gave them a gentle squeeze. The profit from selling veggies today is the start. I still have some savings from my freelance writing, but more importantly, I see potential for passive income. If we nail this winter-spring vegetable crop, combined with selling the chickens for Tet, our income could be 3 or 4 times what it is now. Then you won't have to worry every time Nye needs tuition money or new clothes. James's words hit right at Diep's deepest insecurities. The worry about making ends meet had never really let go of this petite woman. She looked into her husband's eyes and saw not the pipe dreams of a romantic Westerner, but the calculation of a man who wanted to provide for his family, and the veggies too. James continued, I want to use the intercropping method we saw at Uncle Bay's garden. We'll plant herbs like basil and sawtooth coriander in between the cabbage. Herbs are small but high value and don't get many pests. I'll handle the soil prep and the irrigation system. You just need to take care of them and harvest. The night breeze blew harder, rustling the leaves in the garden. Diep took a deep breath of the pure night air. She felt her chest open up, welcoming a new burst of energy. The fear of risk slowly gave way to belief. Since you've calculated it so carefully, let's do it. Diep said, her voice quiet but firm. I want to try too. I want to see this garden lush and green, and I want to see our family prosper. James beamed, his smile lighting up his face under the moonlight. He stood up and pulled Diep to the edge of the porch. He pointed into the darkness in front of them. Imagine it, Diep, just 3 months from now. Over there will be the chicken coop. Every morning you'll hear the roosters crowing. And that sloping strip of land will be rows of lush green mustard greens, stretching as far as the eye can see. We'll build a small hut in the middle of the garden to rest during the midday heat. Nee will have space to run around and learn about nature right here in her own home. Diep rested her head on her husband's shoulder, her eyes following where he pointed. In the darkness, she seemed to catch a glimpse of the green color of hope. She saw the sweat that would fall, but in exchange, she saw her daughter's smile and the peace of their old age later on. Thank you, James, Diep whispered. Thank you for not only loving me, but also loving this barren land. James wrapped his arms around his wife, kissing her forehead lightly. Because you and our daughter are here, that is my world. The night was getting late. The insects were still chirping, but now it sounded like cheering. The couple lingered a little longer, discussing where to buy the chicks tomorrow and what seeds to get. The numbers and plans weren't mapped out on paper, but through their shared understanding under the vast sky. They turned off the porch light and went inside. The wooden door closed, blocking out the wind and dew, keeping inside the warm flame of love and the big dreams that had just been kindled. In her sleep tonight, Diep would surely dream of a bountiful harvest, and James would dream of tomorrow, when he would start nailing the first planks for the